After winning the most controversial election in U.S. history, that we're not allowed to question, the clear winner, Joe Biden, has already racked up many monumental accomplishments as president. So many that he deserves to be on the same list of all-time great world leaders that includes Mao, Stalin, Putin, and Kim Jong-un. What are Biden's greatest accomplishments that have earned him a place in this exclusive club? Let's find out. He classifies U.S. citizens as terrorists. Biden now classifies only a couple 100 million Americans as terrorists. This comes from his new guidelines that state anybody who questions his COVID measures or claims there was election fraud are terror threats. Sounds reasonable. And the fact that he's threatening people with the label of terrorists if they question the election kind of makes people who accidentally think for themselves think there was that thing that we're not allowed to mention. Kind of like Biden's playing poker with his cards facing out, only he doesn't know it. He handed Afghanistan over to the Taliban. After being in Afghanistan for over 20 years to help stabilize the country for our allies, Biden decided to suddenly withdraw all U.S. troops. And right after Biden did that, the Afghani president had to flee the country as terrorist organization, the Taliban, completely took it over, including seizing control of the capital city and the presidential palace. U.S. citizens had to do an emergency evacuation from the roof of the U.S. embassy. With the U.S. not there anymore, the Taliban is currently hunting down and murdering innocent Afghanis who assisted the U.S. in missions against the Taliban. And these people would never have the opportunity to be brutally murdered if it wasn't for the president who got the most votes in U.S. history. Afghanistan getting attacked and taken over by the Taliban after Biden abruptly pulled all U.S. troops out comes after Biden defied U.S. intelligence reports that told him that's what would happen. Biden is a good enough leader that he knew what happened wasn't going to happen. Watch.
Is the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan now inevitable?
No, it is not. Because you have the Afghan troops have 300,000 well-equipped as any army in the world, and an air force against something like 75,000 Taliban. It is not inevitable.
And now that the Taliban has gained a strong foothold of strategic positions, because they have all of them, Biden has ordered thousands of U.S. troops back into Afghanistan. So it's way more dangerous for U.S. troops, but at least the Taliban will be much safer against the U.S. troops. But when giving a news conference about his success in Afghanistan, after he could barely read off a teleprompter for 10 minutes, but before he turned and walked out without answering any questions and went back on vacation, Biden did manage to blame Trump for everything Biden screwed up in Afghanistan. Oh, and also, the Taliban did find tons of U.S. weapons on bases they took over that the U.S. left for the Afghani military. And now the Taliban will be able to use those weapons against U.S. troops because of Biden. Now, that's a great accomplishment of strategic leadership. He took away free speech. Many used to think the First Amendment was untouchable. That is, until Biden started assaulting free speech like it's an intern in Andrew Cuomo's office, who Biden praised for his leadership, by the way. When the White House announced it was instructing Facebook what to censor, Biden successfully became the only president in U.S. history to censor U.S. citizens' right to free speech. He created a race war. Biden has a relentless agenda to get critical race theory taught in workplaces, the military, and most horrifically, schools. He teaches young children that they're evil and born racist if they're white. And he teaches brown and black children that there's no hope for them. All because of their skin color. Biden's been inspiringly indoctrinating kids to judge themselves and other people based on their skin color, not the content of their character, which happens to be the opposite message that Martin Luther King Jr. taught and ultimately gave his life for. So it's kind of like, technically speaking, either Joe Biden or Martin Luther King has to be a racist. And when you consider the facts, like Biden is on record saying of Obama, he's the first mainstream African American who is articulate and bright and clean and a nice-looking guy. And with his sponsoring of the 1994 crime bill, he's perhaps responsible for locking up more black men in prison than anyone else in history. And he also said black people don't know how to get IDs. He also said blacks and Hispanics don't know how to use the internet. And for saying poor kids can be just as bright as white kids. I'm pretty sure it's not Biden that's the racist. Oh, and also, Biden gave the eulogy at the funeral of KKK leader and recruiter Robert Byrd, during which time Biden said he was a friend and mentor. And with all that expert mentoring in mind, I think it's clear that between the two, Martin Luther King's the racist. And if you're still thinking about Biden's whole handing Afghanistan over to the Taliban kind of thing, just know it's hard for Biden to fight terrorism when he's busy terrorizing the citizens of his own country with his race war. So have some compassion for the guy. He told Americans that showing an ID to vote is racist. To protect election integrity, one might think that having to show an ID to vote would be a good thing. Many have thought, well, isn't that policy already in place? Nope. And in order to control all elections, Biden told Americans it's racist to have to show an ID. But instituting mandates to have to show your medical records in order to get into restaurants, shops, and theaters is not racist. It's a show us your papers kind of thing like the Nazis did, who tried to exterminate an entire race, which I don't think was racist. But at least now, for example, the fact that 65% of black people in New York City haven't gotten the shot means that most black people in New York will be banned from eating in restaurants and going into other public places, which is not only obviously not racist, it's unifying. It kind of reminds me when Rosa Parks got on the bus and they told her, go to the back. Only now, Rosa Parks isn't allowed to even get on the bus. He defunded the police. Biden aggressively pushed to defund the police, which helps protect people by not having anybody to protect them. And now with murder rates and crime skyrocketing all over the country, and people mistakenly realizing that defunding the police causes catastrophic problems, Biden is now saying it was the Republicans that wanted to defund the police. Some people would say, he's lying through his teeth! But others who aren't grounded in objective reality would say, that's just good Biden leadership. He promotes disrespecting motherhood. Some would consider motherhood to be the most sacred act in life. But Biden wrings out his depends to piss all over motherhood by trying to indoctrinate people into believing that mothers don't exist. They're birthing people. He's also trying to replace the terms mother's milk with human milk and breastfeeding with chest feeding. Objective truth doesn't have a place in reality. When your brain's achieved Biden levels of dementia, Biden's Build Back Better agenda starts with destroying the nuclear family. And based on how his son Hunter turned out, it's safe to assume Biden's already an expert in this area. And his leadership shows it. He created a border crisis. Biden opened the border for illegals to enter the US and stay in the US. This has significantly boosted the economy of human trafficking while improving foreign relations with drug cartels. But for full transparency, Biden doesn't allow reporters to film or take photos of what's happening at the border. As Biden has allowed well over 1 million illegals to enter the US, he demands US citizens stay in their home and wear a mask around their own family to protect them from COVID. And it's estimated that up to 40% of illegals are infected with it. But sending them all over the country with no testing or safety measures makes Biden's leadership look as true as his narrative on COVID. He subjects the nation to Fauci's abuse. Let me ask you this. If you had a babysitter who was caught abusing your children, you wouldn't feel the need to get a new babysitter, would you? Well, neither does Biden. After it's been proven that Fauci helped create the virus that caused the pandemic by funding gain-of-function research at the Wuhan lab, instead of firing him and prosecuting him to the fullest extent of the law, Biden keeps him as the guy in charge, instructing people on how to interact with the bioweapon that he created. Though the good doctor's mandates and recommendations have arguably caused more deaths of despair than the amount of deaths that he's caused with his virus, his willingness to relentlessly lie makes him a very valuable asset to Biden's leadership council. He's trying to take all your guns. Biden aggressively wants to take all guns from people. Now, while that might treat the Constitution like it's toilet paper, Biden heading up the most authoritarian, tyrannical administration this country has ever seen doesn't look suspicious at all as he wants to disarm the population. Unless you know about history. He's destroyed women's sports. Biden is such a strong advocate for women's rights that he wants all people to have women's rights, including the right to play women's sports. With his push to allow biological males to compete in women's sports, and with many of those said individuals dominating over biological women, many Americans are finding that at least women's sports don't suck as much to watch anymore. Women's cage fighting is my favorite. He's destroyed children's education. Under Biden's dismantling of society, Oregon recently announced it'll allow kids to graduate high school, even if they can't read or do math. As math is now racist, and reading is obviously rooted in the white supremacy of literacy, Biden's helping usher in a new generation of uneducated people. And a society of uneducated people will be completely dependent on the government. A perfect recipe for the masses to obediently welcome in socialism and communism, coincidentally enough, and amongst Biden's other communist-creating coincidences. He wants equity, not equal opportunity. Oh, and here's another one of his communist coincidences already. By comparison, equal opportunity means you're living in the land of opportunity, whereas equality of outcome means you're living in the land of communism, where everyone loses equally, including losing all opportunity. He gave up our energy independence. Because Biden wants to look like he's caring for the environment while he destroys the country, he shut down the Keystone Pipeline. Therefore, Americans get to enjoy skyrocketing gas prices while he's made Europe dependent on Russia for energy. That might mean a loss of power for the US in many senses of the word, but at least he gave a lot more power to Russia. He bends over and spreads them for the Chinese Communist Party. Joe's dedication to helping the Chinese Communist Party is tireless, and it came to a beautiful crescendo when he was speaking of his commanding officer, Xi Jinping, and his current genocide that he's committing against the Uyghurs. Instead of condemning their concentration camps, murders, tortures, rapes, and forced sterilizations, he covered it up by saying they're cultural differences. It takes a strong leader to find the good in genocide. He walked up steps. Biden successfully walked up 9 steps before he fell 3 times in a row on these steps. And then he displayed his strength of character by having his press secretary say the wind blew him over, which somehow makes him look stronger. He's created record inflation. Biden has driven inflation up to its highest level in over 30 years. And if that's not impressive enough, just know he's not slowing it down anytime soon. Biden's economic strategies mean he keeps businesses closed as much as possible so people have to collect unemployment, which he extends for indefinite periods of time. And then when he allows businesses to open, they can't find any employees because they can make more staying at home collecting Biden's special unemployment, as Biden incentivizes people not to work, which decimates the economy even further when business owners can't stay in business anymore. And to fund this economic prosperity, Biden passes trillion-dollar spending packages through like he's Hunter pushing rocks into a crack pipe. And to fund all of this, Biden prints money like it's nothing, which is helping it become nothing as Biden's economic strategies are devaluing your money and destroying the US currency. But while all this happens, you get to enjoy an occasional $600 stimulus check. Wow! Such an impressive list of accomplishments in such a short time in office. For all that he's achieved, we hereby give Biden the Karl Marx Award in Leadership Excellency. Congratulations to Hunter's dad. With all of Biden's accomplishments, it's like he's a star quarterback, playing for China, Russia, and the Taliban. And he's definitely leading his team to victory. Hey, you! Before you go, I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, Blue Blocks, my favorite evidence-based blue light blocking glasses. Blue light is clearly public enemy number 1. At night, blue light tells your body that it's daytime, therefore your body responds as though it's daytime. Hormonally, cortisol levels go up, and that's the exact opposite of what you want to happen at nighttime, because it can completely disrupt your hormonal system, which means your night of sleep is much less restful and get up the next day with less energy, less rejuvenation, less repair. and you don't feel as good. But if you don't love the feeling of not feeling good, and you'd rather feel great with excellent energy and wake up feeling rested and rejuvenated, then Blue Blocks will help protect you from blue light at night so you can get the sleep and rest and hormonal balance that you want, so you can feel and function your best. JP, will wearing Blue Blocks glasses make me look like a dork? No. Unfortunately, they come in a variety of stylish frames that actually make you look better. The Maverick frames with the Sleep Plus lenses are my favorite, and Blue Blocks can even do prescription glasses for you. So if you want to put Public Enemy Blue Light #1 where it belongs, which is not in your system, then get yourself a pair of Blue Blocks at blueblocks.com/JP. And because you're a viewer of mine, you get 15% off when you use the discount code JP, which is named after me. Enjoy.